Welcome to Pencil Leadership. I'm Chris Anderson, success and lifestyle entrepreneur, and I'm on a mission to help you realize your full potential so you can leave a positive mark on the world. So if you're ready, take out your pencils and let's begin. And if you want to make a difference in the lives of others, share this episode, go over to Apple Podcasts and follow us there to leave a positive rating and review. And together we can leave a bigger positive mark on the world. Terry Tucker is on the show today, and he's going to just be able to bring a lot of wisdom and motivation for those who might be going through challenges, who might be, facing some ups and downs, and how we can still lead an uncommon and extraordinary life. So, Terry, welcome to Pencil Leadership today.
Thanks, Chris. I'm looking forward to talking with you.
Absolutely. And I was going over your bio and things like that again before the show, and just truly amazed with everything you've done and everything you've been through in your life to get to where you are today. And so I guess would love for you to share just a little bit about kind of your journey at a high level. I know you probably shared this thousands of times, but just for those tuning in who might not know you, just share a little bit about your journey.
Sure. So I was born and raised in Chicago. I am the oldest of three boys. You cannot tell this from looking at me, but I'm 6'8" tall, and I was fortunate to play college basketball at the Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina, despite having 3 knee surgeries in high school. And when I graduated, I moved home to find a job. I'm really going to date myself now, but this was long before the internet was available. And I was all set to make my mark on the world with my newly obtained business administration degree. Fortunately, I did find that first job in the corporate headquarters in the marketing department of Wendy's International, the hamburger chain. Unfortunately, I ended up living with my parents for the next 3.5 years as I helped my mom care for my father and my grandmother, who were both dying of different forms of cancer. In terms of my professional experience, we talked about Wendy's just a second ago. Then I moved into hospital administration, and then I made a major pivot in my life and became a police officer. And while I was a police officer, I worked undercover narcotics. I was a SWAT team hostage negotiator.
Wow.
I then started my own school security consulting business, coached girls high school basketball in Houston, have been a motivational speaker. Last year became an author, but for the last 9, I guess almost 10 years now, I've been battling this rare form of cancer. And then finally, my wife and I have been married for 28 years. We have one child, a daughter, who's a graduate of the United States Air Force Academy and is an officer in the new branch of the military, the Space Force.
Wow. That is cool, man. So a lot of just experience. Like I said, guys, when I started this out, just a lot going on from, MBA stuff to teaching to police to, SWAT team to, battling cancer, a rare form of cancer at that. And then being married for a couple decades and then having a daughter in the new Space Force program. That's, that says a lot. I mean, to your character, to what you've done, just being able to impact and be a part of so much things. I mean, author, motivational speaker on top of that. So so where do I want to go from here? So that's the question. I guess the first thing that kind of intrigued me was you being on a SWAT team as a negotiator. What was that? I know it's going to be real broad. What was that like? Like that experience, I'm sure there was so much angst and maybe anxiety with it. Maybe not, depending on you, I guess. But how did you deal with those situations? Do any stand out in your mind that you like remember handling well or anything like that? I'm just curious to talk about that.
Yeah, it was a great experience, and I loved it. And I wanted to be sort of the best of the best, and SWAT, they get the best training, they get the best equipment and things like that. So when I had the opportunity, I applied and got on. But many years ago, there was Samuel L. Jackson was in a movie called The Negotiator. And I always get the question, is that what it's like?
Yeah.
No, that's not what it's like. It's a team effort. We go into it with a group of people. Yes, one person is talking to the individual, but there's a person sitting right next to him listening to everything that's going on and writing notes. And then there's an even bigger group, maybe 4 or 5 people kind of outworking the crowd. Why are we here? What's going on? Why did this happen? And, you may get a note that says, don't talk about his mother because that's the, he had a fight with his mother and that's the reason that we're here. So it's definitely, you've got to be comfortable with silence because what we're trying to do is what they always say, you talk the person out. Really what we did is we listened a person out.
Mm-hmm.
We want them to talk. I always talk about it like as a teeter-totter or a seesaw at the park. When we first start, the person's emotional side is way up in the air and their irrational side is down on the ground. You don't make good decisions when you're in an emotional state. So we ask open-ended questions and get them to try to burn off a lot of that emotional energy to where you get to the teeter-totter, at least equilibrium. And if you're lucky, you get it to where the rational side is now up in the air and the emotional side is down on the ground, because you make better choices when you're using your rational brain as opposed to your emotional brain. Yeah. So that's kind of how we did what we did. A couple stories, one quick funny one. Most of these lasted a long time, but this one didn't. I ended up getting on scene because I happened to be working that night. I get there early. I'm talking to the guys, the beat guys that got the house surrounded. I'm like, what's the deal? It's like, he's drunk. He's got his wife barricaded with a gun. I'm like, okay, but we're on the phone with him. We're talking to him. So I take over the conversation and we're talking. And I get to a point where it's like, I say to him, what would it take for you to come out? He's like, give me a beer. I said, if I got you a beer, I'd have your word that you would put the gun down, let your wife out and come out. He said, do I have your word I can drink the beer? I said, you have my word. So I gave one of the officers $5 and said, go down and buy a beer. And the tactical guys put it on the front porch. And I got back on the phone with him. I said, your beer's on the front porch, but you don't get it until your wife comes out and you lay the gun down and then you come out. He's like, do I still have your word? You will, let me drink the beer. I'm like, absolutely. We never lied to people. We negotiated. And all of a sudden the door comes open. Here comes the wife. Here he comes with his hands up. He gets handcuffed, drinks his beer, and off to jail he goes.
Wow. Man, if only all of them were like that,
exactly.
Right? That simple. Man, that's funny though. I was wondering if that, when you said he was drunk, I was wondering if that's what you're going to kind of go to the path. And it's crazy how, like, in those situations, I like what you said, you listened the person out more than talked them out. I think that's a big part of life. I think if we can listen more than we can talk, I think we can do a lot more good and we can make a better impact because we can actually understand, the situations that are going on in our lives and other people's lives as well. So,
and
go ahead.
I think if I can just dovetail on that real quick, I think that's a good point. There's a difference in listening. There's listening to respond, and there's listening, as you said, to understand. And, a lot of times we're in a conversation and it's like, hurry up, Chris, say what you're going to say because I want to get my 2 cents in. That's listening to respond. When you say something and I'm like, okay, Chris, where's that coming from? Let's talk about, we may not agree or we may agree, let's talk about that. That's listening to understand. And if we can get to the point where we're listening to understand, we can do just about anything in the world. But right now we kind of seem to be screaming at each other and we're not getting anything done.
Yeah, I'd agree on that for sure. It's just, too much, especially now with the internet. You can just scream it from your keyboard and not have to really see the outcome from it a whole lot. But I think that's something that kind of leads into that leading your uncommon life, like being different. And I think listening, to learn is uncommon. It's different. And I think that's one thing that we can do to have that kind of that leading of the extraordinary life that you kind of talk about. And so kind of going into that, you've obviously had this life that you've experienced a lot, obviously through everything, and even this rare form of cancer that you're battling. And I know that's a big part of kind of your story right now, and how you share that with people to stay motivated, to keep moving forward and to keep, pushing on. So how do you do that? How do you lead, an uncommon, extraordinary life when you're dealing with, situations that are tough, like your SWAT situation, maybe not that extreme for people, or maybe like a physical challenge, like your health with cancer. How do you do that? How do you show people to do that in their lives?
Yeah, I think we're all going to have pain in our lives, and it doesn't have to be cancer pain like mine, or even an illness. You could flunk a test at school, or break up with your boyfriend or your girlfriend, or not get the promotion at work that you think you deserve. pain is inevitable. Suffering, on the other hand, suffering's optional. Suffering's what you do with that pain. Do you use it to make you a stronger and tougher and more determined individual, or do you wallow in it, and feel sorry for yourself and want people to feel sorry for you? It is a choice on how you want to do it. The world doesn't owe you a thing. So you got to get to a point in your life where I always talk about finding your purpose or your why. I remember Mark Twain, the humorist back in the early 1900s, had a great quote. He said, the two most important days of our lives are the day we're born and the day we figure out why. So many people never figure out the why of their lives. And, they sort of, casually move through their lives. And by doing that, their hopes, their dreams, their ambitions become a casualty of that unplanned living. So I always tell people to get out there and find your purpose. But the only way you're going to do that is to step outside your comfort zones, to do things that make you uncomfortable, that could potentially be embarrassing. I always recommend that people every day do at least one thing that makes them uncomfortable, that scares them a little bit, that could potentially be embarrassing. Because if you do that with the little things, when the big things come in your life, and you lose your job, or you lose your relationship, or you have a spouse or a child die or something like that, you'll be able to handle those things, because every day you handle the small stuff, over time, eventually you'll be able to handle the big stuff.
Yeah, I think, and that's crucial, is just starting to implement it in a small way to build that, that muscle or that habit forming thing. And so, like, I know with your story, and if you're open to it, sharing a little bit about kind of what you're dealing with your cancer and what you've dealt with so far on that journey, just to give people an idea of, like, you're battling it, and it's been it hasn't just been an easy thing. Not that cancer is ever easy, but you've gone through a lot of different things with that, just for people to understand your journey more, that you can still keep this mindset of motivation yourself.
Sure. So 2012, I'm a girls' high school basketball coach in Texas, and I have a callus break open on the bottom of my left foot, right below my third toe. And being a coach, you're on your feet a lot, so I didn't initially think much of it. But after a couple of weeks, when it didn't heal, I went to see a podiatrist, a foot doctor friend of mine, and he took an x-ray and he said, "Terry, I think you have a little cyst in there and I can cut it out." And he did. And he showed it to me. Just a simple gelatin sac with some white fat in it. No dark spots, no blood, nothing that gave either one of us concern. But he sent it off to pathology to have it looked at. And then 2 weeks later, I get a call from him. And as I said, he was a friend. So the more difficulty he was having telling me what was going on, the more frightened I was becoming, until he kind of just laid it out. He said, "Terry, I've been a doctor for 25 years. I have never seen this form of cancer. You have a very rare form of melanoma that appears on the bottom of the feet or the palms of the hands. I recommend you go to MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston and be treated." And so I did. And, I had the bottom of my foot excised. I had all the lymph nodes in my groin removed. And when I healed, I was put on a weekly injection of a drug called Interferon. And basically what Interferon did for me is it gave me severe flu-like symptoms for 2 to 3 days every week after each injection of the drug. And I took those weekly injections for almost 5 years. So imagine having the flu every week for 5 years. And for me, that wasn't a cure. That was just to keep the disease from coming back. Eventually, 2017, I had to stop the drug because it became too toxic to my body. And the cancer came back almost immediately. 2018, I had my left foot amputated. 2019, the disease worked its way up my leg into my shin. I had 2 more surgeries. And then last year, an undiagnosed tumor kind of in my ankle area of my leg grew large enough that it fractured my tibia, my shin bone. And my only recourse right in the middle of the pandemic was to have my left leg amputated above the knee. And I also found out I had tumors in my lungs, which I am undergoing treatment for those right now. So on that uplifting story.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing, just for people who can understand where you're coming from with this, and that you're still you've built this muscle of, having this mindset, this determination not to give up, to keep going forward, to have that motivation, almost self-motivated type thing, because some people might not understand or realize that. And so I appreciate you sharing that. So if you're speaking to someone, if you're on a stage doing your motivational speaking, or just in general, how would you approach the conversation, or what would you say to those who might be dealing with something difficult, so they can, continue to stay motivated, to keep pushing forward, so they can continue to lead, this uncommon life that we're kind of hitting on?
You love listening to podcasts, but have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? Maybe you want to build a brand, grow your business, or are looking for an excuse to talk about your favorite hobby. Whatever your reason for making a podcast, Buzzsprout is the place to start. Since 2009, Buzzsprout has helped over 300,000 people launch their own podcasts. Buzzsprout walks you step by step through the whole process and will give you powerful tools to start, grow, and monetize your podcast. Ready to get started? Click the link in the show notes to get our free step-by-step guide to starting your podcast today.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I learned from all my years of team sports, and I started playing organized sports when I was 9 years old and played all the way up till I graduated from college, was the importance of being part of something that's bigger than yourself. And, we all tend to, I've got cancer. Oh, so this is all about me. It's not about you. It's absolutely not about you. And I think, you learn in team sports that if you don't do your job, not only do you let yourself down, but you let your teammates down, your coaches down, your fans down, your parents down, et cetera. And if you think about the biggest team game that we all play, it's this game of life. And I think that's the big thing. Find something that's bigger than you. I am undergoing a clinical trial now of a drug that more than likely is not going to save my life, but very well may help the doctors to, synthesize a drug that will maybe save somebody's life 5 or 10 years from now, when I won't be here at all. And I'll never meet that person. But knowing that makes my life bigger than what I'm dealing with now. It's not about cancer. It's about helping somebody that I'll never know. So I try to get people to kind of look outside themselves. And how can your experience, there's always people looking at you. You don't know who that. I had a nurse recently who said to me, when I first met her, she was in nursing. She was in the unit I was on, but she was in training. A couple months ago, she was taking care of me by herself. She said, I've got a story to tell you, but I'm really kind of uncomfortable with it. And I'm like, just tell me. And she's young. She's about 25 years old. She said, when I first met you, I was going to get out of nursing. I was in a dark place. I'd had a friend die, and I was in a really, really bad place. And I talked to my mom and dad. I was going to quit nursing, and I was going to go to work for Amazon. And she said, and then I met you, and I see what you go through every day, but you keep coming back. And I heard your story, and I listened to everything that happens in your life, and I knew I was where I was supposed to be. Now, if she would have never told me that, I would have no idea how much my life had impacted her. What life do you have? The life you're living. Who do you know or don't know that's looking at you and saying, you know what, I want to be like Chris. But Chris has no idea that person's out there. Those people exist. There are people out there that are looking at you and want to be like you. Yeah. And again, that's part of being something that's bigger than you.
Wow. And to have that mindset of, I have cancer and maybe I won't survive with this treatment or whatever, but I'm part of, a solution for maybe generations to come, helping people, and having that mindset and looking at it that way, instead of like, how will this affect me, or what will this change in my life, and things like that. It's your vision or your direction of it might not help me, but it can help people, 5-10 years down the road. And that's just, it's commendable that you have that, and just really inspiring, which I guess that's why you're a motivational speaker, because you can do that and impact through that. But it's a really an eye-opening thing to hear you speak about that, and just again, that's kind of what Pencil Leadership is, why I started it, was because I want people to understand they have so much potential and passion that they're not living into because of, whatever fear or whatever it is. And people are missing out because of that. Like, if we're not living into our potential and what we were created to do, or what we can do positive in the moment, like, there are people who are missing out because we're not taking action on that. And so with you just living it out, I mean, you kept that lady is a nurse now, and who knows who she goes on to save or impact, that then and then those people impact, and the ripple effect, it just continues from you just having the positive inspirational mindset with things. And so in life, I guess we never, like you said, you might not ever see the ripples or how it affects people.
Yeah, you may not, and I mean, you're looking at me right now. I mean, there's no S on my chest. I'm not wearing a cape. I mean, I'm a human being. I have bad days. I cry, I get down. I get depressed. I just choose not to stay there, and it is a choice. And whenever I get there, I recall two stories. One is about a professor back in the 1950s who did an experiment with rats at Johns Hopkins University. It was a very simple experiment. He took rats and he put them in a tank of water that was over their head, and he wanted to see how long they could tread water before they would sink and drown. And the average rat treaded water for about 15 minutes, but right as they were getting ready to sink, he reached in and grabbed them, pulled them out, dried them off, let them rest for a while, and then he put them back in that exact same tank of water. And the second time around, those rats treaded water for 60 hours. Think about that. I can only do 15 minutes. That's all I can do. And then I'm going to sink and I'm going to drown. The second time, 60 hours, which says to me two things. One, the importance of hope in our lives. We have to have hope. We have to have something that, we believe life is going to get better, or we have a goal that we're trying to obtain. And two, just how much more our physical bodies can handle than we ever thought that they possibly could. I have a friend who's a former Navy SEAL, and we talk about the SEALs 40% rule, where they say, if you're at the end of your rope and you don't think you can go on, you're only at 40% of your maximum, and you still have 60% left to give to yourself. So whenever you get in that situation, and like I said, I get there. I'm a human being. I'm not perfect. But whenever I get there, I think about how much more I still have left to give to myself. If other people think that same way, there's nothing that you can't accomplish if you keep remembering that.
Yeah, and I think that's a great story and a great study. We really don't even understand, I guess, our full potential. Even when we think we do, there's just so much more, like that next level we can get to. And the mind is such a big part of it, and having that hope, like you said. So how would you guide people into gaining that hope, or gaining kind of that perspective, or what steps to take to be able to build that kind of muscle?
Yeah, I remember, I know you're from Indiana, and I remember Bobby Knight, who was the basketball coach in Indiana. He had a great saying. He said, mental is to physical as 4 is to 1. Here's a guy who's teaching players, basically to use their bodies to make moves and do things like that and be successful. But what he's telling them is it's really not about your body. It's about your mind. And, I always think that, my pain is going to end someday. It may end through surgery. Quite frankly, it may end through medication. In all honesty, it very well may end through death. But if I quit, if I give up, if I give in to the pain in my life, then pain will always be a part of my life. And I talk about what I've learned over these last 9, almost 10 years now, in terms of my 4 truths. And the first one, I'll give them to you. That I'm on a Post-it note that I see every day. And they're just one sentence each. The first one is, you need to control your mind, or your mind is going to control you. The second one is, you need to embrace the pain and the difficulty that we all experience in life, and use that pain and difficulty to make you a stronger person. We have a tendency to want to run from pain. But what if you didn't? What if you did just the opposite? What if you flipped it inside and burned it as fuel and used it as energy to make you a stronger person? That's what I do. And believe me, if
Mhm.
I can do it, anybody can do it. So that's number two. Number three is more of a legacy truth. And it's this: what you leave behind is what you weave in the hearts of other people. And
Mm.
the fourth one is pretty self explanatory. As long as you don't quit, as long as you don't give up, you can never be defeated. So I like to use those four truths in making decisions in my life. Should I get involved in this? Am I going to do this
Mm.
therapy? Am I not going to do it? What's going on with that? Those four truths work for me. If they work for you, please feel free to take them and use them. If one or two does, use those and develop your own. But find what is, I guess I look at these truths as they're kind of the bedrock of my soul. They're things that
Mm.
I can build my life on because I know they're constant. They're not going away. They're not going to change. Find those things in your life. You can do anything you want to do.
Mm. Yeah, and those are very really good, actionable. I mean, intentional things we can do each day. And again, yeah, controlling the mind, embracing the pain, leaving that legacy, leaving it in the hearts of others, and then not quitting because then you can't be defeated. I think those are all crucial pieces to just living this uncommon and extraordinary life. And I think it's like the quote I heard, kind of going along those lines of like, keep your head up because you've already made it through 100% of all your bad days. And so like you've had all these you've made them through them all. You've made it through all these rough times. So continue to just keep moving forward. Don't quit and have that. And I think a big part, like you said, is the perspective, controlling that mind, seeing the hope, trying to see a positive, a silver lining, the obstacles away type thing. I say a lot because I love that quote. And
Great book.
yeah, it's a good book too. And so I think all of that just plays into it. And it can be through anything. Like we can do these for truths, no matter the level of difficulty you're experiencing. And I think what you said was a big one before those was just embracing the pain. I think a lot of people, and myself included, have steered away from pain sometimes, thinking it'll be better, or it'll be simpler. You get there faster, whatever it is. But there's nothing like improving through that pain. Like when you work out, and you have to have the pain to get stronger. Or like me, if you're trying to do yoga to get more flexible, you got to push through the pain a little bit to get more flexible. And so I think it's just like that in life with whatever we're doing, is to be able to push through that pain. So, so what would, I guess, if you're in a room with someone right now, and they ask you, Terry, I'm going through some hard times right now in life. What would be the one thing that I could lean into or learn from to better my situation, better my mindset? Where would you direct them? Obviously, you have these four truths, but is there a tool? Is there a book? Is there something that you've found super valuable when building your mindset that individual would benefit from knowing?
I guess maybe I could answer that with a story.
Yeah.
I've always been a big fan of westerns growing up. My mom and dad used to let me stay up and watch Gunsmoke and Wild Wild West,
Yes.
things like that.
Bonanza.
Yeah, Bonanza, exactly.
Nice.
Now I'm really dating myself.
That's okay. I like them too.
But 1993, you probably saw this movie. The movie Tombstone came out, and
Okay.
it starred Val Kilmer as a man by
Mhm.
the name of John Doc Holliday, and Kurt Russell as a man by the name of Wyatt Earp. Now, Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp were two living, breathing human beings who walked on the face of the earth. They're not made up characters for the movie. And Doc was called Doc because he was a dentist by trade, but pretty much he was a gunslinger and a card shark. And Wyatt had been a lawman his entire life. But these two men from entirely divergent backgrounds come together to form this very strong friendship. And at the end of the movie, Doc is dying at a sanitarium in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, which is about 3 hours from my house. The real Doc Holliday died at that sanitarium. He's buried in the Glenwood Springs Cemetery. And Wyatt, at this point in his life, is destitute. He has no money, he has no job, he has no prospects for a job. So every day he comes to play cards with Doc, and the two men pass the time that way. And in this scene, they're talking about what they want out of life. And Doc says, I was in love with my cousin when I was younger, but she joined a convent over the affair, but she's all that I ever wanted. And he looks at Wyatt and he says, what about you, Wyatt? What do you want? And Wyatt kind of nonchalantly says, I just want to lead a normal life. And Doc looks at him and says, there's no normal, there's just life, and get on with living yours. Chris, you and I know people out there who are kind of just hanging back and be like, you know what, when this happens, I'll have a normal life. When that happens, I'll have a successful life. When this happens, I'll have a significant life. What I'm saying is don't wait. Don't wait for what life to come to you. Get out there, find the reason that you were put on the face of this earth and live it. Because if you do, at the end of your life, I'm going to promise you two things. One, you're going to be a whole lot happier. And two, you're going to have a whole lot more peace in your heart.
I love that. And actually, unfortunately, I have not seen Tombstone yet. And it's funny you bring that up because my brother, we were talking about the other day and he's like, you got to watch Tombstone. So, but anyways, off that, I think that's a great story to match with that. And I agree that, we've got to get busy living or we're going to get busy dying kind of thing. And so, with that, and it ties in perfectly. So as kind of we wrap up, the fifth trait of pencil leadership is just that we're all created uniquely with a purpose to leave a positive mark in the world. And so for you, when everything is said and done for you here on earth, what do you hope your positive mark is?
Right now, I thought at a point in time in my life, and I believe this is true, my purpose was to be a police officer. I think now, with whatever time I have left, I want to put as much goodness, as much positivity, as much motivation, as much love back into the world as I can. And if I can do that, then hopefully my life will have even more meaning.
And it's again, a great journey you're on, and what you're doing with your story and what you're going through is definitely impacting people. I have no doubt there. And I hope that at least even just one person listening to this will find a benefit and a positive thing to take from it. So I appreciate you being on, sharing your story, sharing your experiences, sharing your truths for others to benefit from. And so with that, where can people connect with you, Terry? Where can people find you and continue to get motivation from you?
Sure. So I have a blog called Motivational Check. Every day I put up a thought for the day with usually a question with it to kind of get you to think about that quote and how maybe that can be used in your day. On Mondays, I put up the Monday morning motivational message, which is usually a video or a story that's a little bit longer, but I realize people's time is at a premium. So I try to keep everything short. So motivationalcheck.com will get you to me. You can leave me a message there. You can get access to my social media sites. You can actually even buy my book there if you want.
Awesome. Cool. Well, yeah, everyone definitely get to motivationalcheck.com. Check that out. Get connected with Terry. Again, Terry, we really appreciate you being on Pencil Leadership today and just sharing with everyone about your journey, your story, and how we can lead an uncommon and extraordinary life.
Well, thanks for having me on, Chris. Hopefully we're going to make a difference in somebody's life today. And if we do that, today's been a good day.
And thanks so much for tuning into this episode today. If you found value at all from this episode, please leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It just helps us get this show, these messages out in front of more people. And don't forget to share this with someone who you think could benefit from listening to as well. Now let's go out and be pencil leaders.